live?
Yeah, once we know that works.
Okay.
Sorry, everybody. Facebook broke this integration a couple of months ago. So Brent's point is maybe it happened again, the Zoom to Facebook stream. YouTube's been reliable, so. The other thing we should do is Lauren should be sure to post the link to the YouTube channel in the Facebook page so people see that you can go there. Still hard to hear me, Jessica? Check, test, 1, 2.
A little bit better, but when you were talking, it was getting really, really low.
Okay. All right, we're good to go. Welcome, everyone. This is Lee Whitmore. I'm the Executive Director for the Grammy Music Education Coalition. We're so happy to have you here today. I'm going to give it just a minute or so. We're posting to let folks know we had technical issues with the Zoom to Facebook integration today, so this is live on our YouTube channel. So let's just hold for one more minute to give folks time to move over to YouTube to begin watching this conversation there. And we're so excited. We have so many great panelists today. This is going to be a great conversation. Welcome, everybody. This is Lee Whitmore. I'm the Executive Director for the Grammy Music Education Coalition. We're so grateful that you've joined our Hub Live series of virtual town halls. We've been holding these since the pandemic hit, talking to different stakeholders and practitioners and folks that are making music education happen. And today, I'm super happy to let you know that our Director for Education Programs, Strategic Education Programs, Dr. Ryan Zellner, is our moderator. And we have arts and music leaders from 4 states joining us today. A great audience. You're going to love the conversation today, everybody. And Ryan, I'm going to turn it over to you to take it from here, and I'll be back at the end of the session.
Excellent, and thank you very much. We are excited to bring you another edition of the GMC Virtual Town Hall. And today we're featuring 4 leaders of arts from across our great states. We have Lori Flens, who's the Executive Director for the Wisconsin School Music Association, Wisconsin Music Educators Association, and the Wisconsin Foundation for School Music. I get bonus points for getting all of them, by the way, Lori. We also have Jason Anderson, who's the Fine Arts Specialist for Maine Department of Education. Jessica Booth, who's the Fine Arts Education Program Manager for the Georgia Department of Education, and David Dietz, who's the Fine Arts Education Consultant for the Pennsylvania Department of Education. So we're very excited to bring them all here today to chat about these serious conditions that we're undertaking, what it's looking like for our parents, our students, our administrators, our schools across these states. And we're going to start with Lori from Wisconsin, and she's going to talk a little bit about some of the initiatives that Wisconsin is taking on and some of the things that they've been thinking about at the state level. So welcome, Lori, and thank you for joining us.
Well, first and most importantly, I just want to thank Lee and Ryan for the invitation today, and to my fellow panelists, Jason, David, and Jessica. It's really an honor to be here with you as the State Department of Ed reps. In Wisconsin, we have a fantastic teaching and learning team at our Department of Public Instruction. And I'd like to send a special shout out to Julie Palkowski, our Arts and Creativity Consultant. She's one of your fellow CDA members who I'm sure is watching. In Wisconsin, our associations are working very closely with Department of Public Instruction as we look towards these possible scenarios for Wisconsin schools and education for fall 2020 and spring 2021. As Ryan shared, I am the Executive Director of 3 nonprofits that are under one roof at the Wisconsin Center for Music Education, which is located in Waunakee, Wisconsin, just south of Madison. Although actually right now we are housed all around the greater Dane County area because we are all working from our homes, and can't wait till the day we can reconvene at our beautiful center. Before I share perspective about what's happening in Wisconsin, I just want to provide a little context about the vision and missions of our state music associations. We share a common vision that in our Wisconsin schools and communities all have access to enriching musical opportunities that assure a lifetime of involvement and enjoyment. But the way that we reach that vision is through our separate missions. So our Wisconsin School Music Association, it exists to provide statewide music programming activities to our youth, lifelong involvement in music opportunities, leadership and support for our school music programs, and also just generally advancing music as integral to school curriculum and community life, which, you know, we're seeing play out in many new ways through this pandemic that we're facing. Our Music Educators Association is the federated affiliate of the National Association for Music Education, and they exist to support music education by representing the shared interests and needs of our music educators and fostering their professional growth in a global society. So as I share with you what's going on in Wisconsin today, I'm going to try to just address generally what's happening through the arts and music specifically, because that's who I represent, and then also an exciting coalition opportunity that will launch next week in Wisconsin. So when we made the difficult decision to cancel the rest of our programming this spring for our kiddos in Wisconsin, we essentially ended an opportunity midstream for thousands and thousands of students who were working on their solo and ensemble festival. And literally, as we were loading our desk chairs into our cars mid-March, we had a resolve that we were going to figure out a way for our kids who it really mattered to complete their festival. And so we're proud to say we're one of the only states in the country that pulled off a virtual solo festival since we left in March. 5,000 students either were able to perform their district or their state festival piece through a closed format, thanks to a relationship we formed with CS Music out near Salt Lake City. They had a platform that they used for online auditions that allowed us to still adjudicate the solos through private sharing of links. And so I think that example talks about Wisconsin, and it's the what and who we serve are still very clear in this time. It's just the how that's been temporarily upended, right? But we continue to find ways to serve our kids, and we're really committed through any environmental configuration that exists next year to figuring that out. And I think I can speak for, because I've had lots of conversations with other arts organizations here in Wisconsin, that's where the commitment lies, is we will figure out the how, because well-rounded and student-centered education is still needed. So we are gearing up to ensure there's accurate information about what's occurring in our state. And I think that's something that I'm seeing as an important need that we as state representatives hold, is that our teachers are participating in a lot of really rich and valuable chat rooms, but it's causing a lot of concern because they hear what's happening in other states and then they project it on their own and don't know what the state level conversations are right now. And I think we're very committed to trying to clear up some of that clutter and chatter because it's much needed. So WSMA and WMEA, staying true to our missions to serve our students and educators, are going to work together. And one of the things we're launching is a new website next week called Wisconsin Music Strong. It'll be a platform where all statewide music and arts education-based nonprofits, for-profit music retailers, organizations, and our DPIs agreed to work with us. So we can just make sure we have accurate, timely information coming out in our state. Different people are doing different work, and we want to have a neutral platform where all of the good work but accurate information can be shared. And we're also going to host an online town hall meeting next Tuesday. I have to smile. We were going to do it on Facebook, but we might look at what platforms are available to us. But make sure that we get out the message. So I'm going to be hosting a conversation with Tamara Mao, who's the Director of Teaching and Learning at DPI, and Julie Pelkowski, the Arts and Education Consultant. so they can share what the actual state level conversations are out to our music educators. The other three things in Wisconsin that we believe are really important to get out are, we have legislation that talks about what our job is in education, between the Every Student Succeeds Act, our own unique Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction Administrative Rule, PI 8. It states through Wisconsin law that music instruction, and there's a parallel one for arts instruction, shall be provided to all students in kindergarten through grade 6, and that it's required to be offered grades 7 through 12. And then finally, on February 5th, 2020, it happened a month before the pandemic started, our governor signed into law Act 85, which was formerly Assembly Bill 67, that's now going to require the Department of Public Instruction to include in the annual accountability report cards information about the percentage of pupils participating in music, dance, drama, and visual arts. It won't be figured into the accountability score, but it'll be a data point. And under this bill, DPI needs to include this information. So when we look at those three pieces of legislation, even though how we deliver instruction to our kids need to look different, we've already decided as a state that well-rounded education is needed for our kids. And I think that's one of the pieces we want to talk about, is what can that look like in these times when the different school schedules need to be configured. As I come into the last part of this, there's just a couple of things I want to pull together in my thinking. One was the call yesterday with NAM Foundation and NAFME. What incredible leadership with Mary Lewisser and Kathy Sands, Lynn Tuttle, and so many others working at the national level. But there was yesterday in that call a discussion about the needs for this fall for social emotional supports for our youth, technical supports for our students, families, and educators, and then more distance learning training for educators being priorities for professional learning and our focus. And we all know music and education are gateways to meeting those social emotional needs through our standards of creating, responding, and connecting. And the arts are essential to a well-rounded education through any environment. So just to kind of contextualize the end of this with Wisconsin, I'm blessed to work with incredible leadership happening statewide here. Our WMEA Standards Committee is gearing up for a July event that will focus on advocacy through the standards. Paul Booty, who's our president-elect for WMEA, is leading work through our advocacy committee. We have amazing music retailers who are NAM members, such as Tristan at Brass Bell and Todd and Dee Dee Hyde at Hyde Music and Chris White at White House of Music, that are creating resources and supports for teachers on their websites. DPI, as I mentioned. We've got Chris Gleason leading meetings with teachers online, so they have a voice and a place to have conversation. And so honestly, that list, I could just keep going. Our Wisconsin School Music Association is just simply looking right now at pulling together their great work into this Wisconsin Music Strong platform, so that all of our music and arts educators in Wisconsin and our school administrators and those who need to know can access state-specific information. And I think that's sort of my message, is the need to really get state-specific right now so we can clear up some of the issues around what's a national issue and what's a local and state issue. And so I, again, just want to thank Ryan and Lee for this opportunity to just share a little bit about what's going on in Wisconsin, and look forward to hearing from my other panelists about what's going on in your state.
Thank you so much, Lori. It's interesting to me in the sense of while everything's been shaken up, you have this sort of great coming together, right? You have these other resources and the others pulling in what's important about music, and it's always been important. And it's not necessarily changing what we're doing, but what's the application of that actual process to get into it, and realizing that within this, there can be a lot of great things that come out of it as we look ahead, and whether it's different technologies or access to additional resources, or companies that are making their products, available for free for some period of time for teachers to use. It really exposes us to the greater musics that are being made. For those of you just joining us, if you had some trouble, that was Lori Flynn. She's the Executive Director of the Wisconsin School Music Association, the Music Educators Association, and the Foundation of School of Music. We also have Jason Anderson with us, who's the Fine Arts Specialist from Maine Department of Education. Jessica Booth, who's the Fine Arts Education Program Manager from the Georgia Department of Education, and David Dietz, who's the Fine Arts Education Consultant from the Pennsylvania Department of Education. And if you have any questions or any comments as you go along, please add them to the YouTube channel, and they'll get forwarded to us, and we can insert them right in the conversation. But we're going to keep moving things along, and we're going to ask Jason to share what Maine is up to right now.
Sure, and thanks Ryan and Lee and my fellow panelists for giving me the opportunity to be here to talk to you about all the great things that are going on in Maine in spite of this strange world that we're living in right now. And just to piggyback on what Lori said a few minutes ago and what Ryan just alluded to, you know, it is really fantastic, the coming together experience that we've had in Maine in the arts community and in music specifically, and to speak to what it's like to work with great leadership, both at the Department of Education level, but also with the Maine Music Educators Association. Ben Potvin is the current president, and Beth Labrie is the executive director there. And they really, from day one, which for us was March 16th, have started mobilizing in a variety of different ways our music community. And we're seeing that with our other arts organizations statewide as well. We started off in Maine with a real successful series of office hours, and that was for all of our content specialists, but it gave me an opportunity to meet pretty regularly with our visual arts teachers, music teachers, theater teachers, and dance teachers. And just to, again, that whole, like Ryan alluded to a couple minutes ago, the coming together of everybody, this was provided us a really unique opportunity for some pretty intense networking that sometimes only happens once a year at our state conferences. So for everybody to come together and decide that they want to start actively problem solving to figure out both how to survive in the current environment, but what to look for in the future has really been inspiring to me. And I think to everybody around the state, whether you're a veteran arts teacher or a novice arts teacher. It's been a really great opportunity. So those office hours continue for us, and I hold those every week with everybody. And similar to what Lori said about having a town hall, I'm actually, tonight is the third night that I'm meeting with arts teachers around the state to gauge, you know, where they've been and how they're feeling and where they hope that we're going to go. It's an opportunity both to acknowledge some of the challenges, significant challenges that some of our teachers have had with Maine being a very rural state, and we've had some access to devices and connectivity issues as a lot of other states in their rural areas have had, and I'll speak to that briefly in just a moment. But just sort of to get the real pulse of what's going on with our arts world, so that our Commissioner of Education's task force, which has started to meet, will have a seat at the table, and arts education is gonna have a voice there, which is really exciting, so that we can make sure that arts remains an integral part of learning for all of Maine's students. Really exciting collaboration that we've had in Maine that I think maybe Jessica has had in Georgia as well and other states. Is with our public broadcasting station. And so Maine Public has been a fantastic partner with the Department of Education in Maine, getting together to provide daily programming for students in grades 3 through 5. And I've been excited that we're starting to have some visual arts and music teachers presenting some lessons on there as well, which is really exciting. So we're happy that arts are being represented there and having that broadcast around the state and available for students again in grades 3 through 5. At the Department of Education, we're, as I'm sure many departments of ed are looking at right now, we're seeing this as a very unique, almost a once in a lifetime, and that sounds really cliche, but an opportunity to really reinvent the landscape of what education can and maybe should look like. And so we're really starting to revisit the idea of interdisciplinary and integrated arts learning statewide in all of our content areas. And so to that end, we're starting to design and get ready to present a series of summer professional development opportunities for our teachers that are really around that interdisciplinary arts and integrated arts vein, which we're really excited about. And we're also, like a lot of people, we're looking at what it means for online or virtual teaching and learning, because we know that our teachers are experiencing that the pedagogy is different and that the outcomes are different. So we're cognizant of the reality that this is going to be part of our new reality. So we're really trying to take the bull by the horns and do some good work to prepare teachers to that end. our Maine Music Educators Association has been instrumental, no pun intended, in putting together virtual ensembles for our All-State Festival, which ironically would have been this week. So we would have had close to, I think, between 600 and 800 music students from around the state, high school music students participating in the All-State Festival. And the fact that they are making every effort to put together virtual ensembles for that is a real testament to the desire of wanting to return some normalcy to our kids. And they have a real awesome virtual conference set of modules that are going to be rolled out tomorrow, which I'm really excited about as well. So that's going to be, again, a great credit to Maine Music Educators Association, both the membership and the leadership for coming together on that. And so other than that, I could go on and on like Lori could about all the other things that are happening, but I want to make sure I share the air with everybody else. So thank you for the opportunity to share that, Ryan.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jason. And just to let you know, you're just receiving a lot of compliments on the YouTube channel at this point. People very supportive of the work that you've been doing. And I think as Jason talked about closing this technological gap, one of the things that the school district of Philadelphia had to do very quickly was distribute thousands of Chromebooks to their students in order to have some sort of access, right? And now that has been done, what does that mean for the future? Right now that you have this sort of technological gap and you're closing it, right? What sort of things does that mean for the future of music education? And that's something for us to consider, where many times, encouraging students to practice or integrate with each other outside of the school day in whatever shape or form, all of a sudden now you can integrate with anyone, anywhere, at any time, to be able to create music, right? To create something that you love and something that's so important to all of us. So how is that going to build? I think you're seeing this greater sense of community with the teachers, but I think one of these things that ultimately come about is this greater sense of community with the students, or at least this ability to reach out and understand what's out there. Thank you very much, Jason. I appreciate your time and joining us today. We're going to turn to Jessica, who's from the Georgia Department of Education.
Hey, great to be here. And I'll probably be building on what Lori and Jason have already introduced. Georgia's reopening is going to look very different depending on where you are. Whereas we have 1.8 million students in the state and about 180 plus school districts. So we're the 8th most populated state in the country. And majority of those students almost 3/4 live in the metropolitan areas of Atlanta, Savannah, and Augusta. So what the reopening looks like there, as opposed to some of our more rural areas, is going to be night and day. So from my perspective here at the Department of Ed, I'm trying to figure out how can we support schools knowing that all of our 181 school districts are likely to start in a different way. So I've been working with my district supervisors. There are kind of feet on the ground. I had that job for many years before going to the Department of Ed. And I've been meeting with them through this whole pandemic so far on a weekly basis. We've been calling them brown bag luncheon leads, but it's basically been a place for them to share ideas and come up with some plans depending on which way the school openings go in the fall. And we kind of came up with 5 big areas. Obviously we could start on time and it would be like a normal school year. We could start on time and it's virtual. We could have where we start on time and then have rolling closures. We could have alternative schedules where it's an A/B, or we even have some school districts talking about Monday, Tuesday is half of the school, Wednesday is a deep cleaning day and everyone's virtual, and Thursday and Friday are the other half of the school. And then we may be in a situation, and this is something that's been very popular with some of our rural districts that are much smaller, of having a truncated or accelerated first semester. So instead of being an 18-week traditional first semester, it might be 12 or 15 weeks. So I've been working with my District Arts Coordinators Council, which is a long acronym, but basically my district arts supervisors. And we only have about 40 school districts out of the 181 that have this role. To come up with ideas of, if you were in any of those 5 scenarios, how can we support dance teachers as opposed to music teachers, as opposed to theater and visual arts, and coming up with lists to help them. So besides that, we're kind of pivoting into, if they can plan for it, it will make it easier for them to support teachers, which in turn helps students. And I think they feel a little more in control of the situation now because they're able to do that and they're more involved in the planning stages. We don't know what most of our school districts are going to do yet in the fall. So as a group, you can collectively plan for 5 different scenarios. On your own, it's fairly overwhelming. I feel like our role is to bring leaders together so that they can share ideas and share these plans and then choose what's best for their own communities. Our Georgia Department of Education has had a commitment to whole child education. It's part of what's written into our strategic plan for the last 6 years. It's been added as a measure for school success, K through 12, whether or not students have access to the arts. And I don't see that going away. I think we're looking a lot, like Jason, at arts integration and how we can use arts integration with other subjects to accelerate learning, especially if we're in that sped up environment for first semester. And I've also been thinking about how do I rethink the professional development. Part of what my role at the district office or at the state office is, yes, working with district supervisors, but also we do a tremendous amount of teacher training. So we've created more than 3,000 instructional resources now that are all OER. And I know that you're going to put it in the chat. You can download. They're for music. We also have art, theater, media arts, and dance instructional resources that teachers can use. They were created before the pandemic. So some of them are ready to go, and some of them you would have to do some adaptations in order to use them in your classrooms virtually. But also we're moving all of the professional development for next year and for this summer online at the Department of Education. So we're reimagining things like a one-day workshop that I did last year all across the state called Deconstructed Drawing, that goes through the basics of drawing. And how does that look, an 8-hour hands-on workshop, if you spread it out over a virtual environment? Teachers go back to their classroom, have activities to do with students and reflections, and then they come back and get the next section. We also did a social emotional learning / workforce development and elementary school music training last year that was a day long. How would that look if it was throughout the whole school year and teachers had more time for reflection and more time to practice it before they came back to get the next section? So the funny thing is, because we're at the state and we end up going into school districts and going into these regional education service agencies that we have, like kind of little arms of the Department of Education across the state, because of the pandemic, it's actually going to cause us to change how we operate as a service organization to be a better practice for staff development, which when I was a district supervisor, it was much easier for me to have prolonged, sustained in the classroom staff development. But at the state level, I don't have access to students or classrooms. I have access to teachers and district supervisors. So this will allow us to model better staff development, hopefully. And also we're working on some just-in-time curating of resources and webinars and trainings that basically are showing fine arts teachers, the folks that are doing this successfully right now, what's the best of the best of what's free. So if you're performing arts, you're a music teacher, and you want to connect with students, these 4 things are what students are talking about. And Ryan talked about this a little bit earlier, like you're using Flipgrid to do a demonstration, or you're using a private Instagram station channel to have students upload into their class their monologues. So we're actually creating that training right now where teachers can click on the things that they're interested in that they don't necessarily know, rather than sitting through a whole hour, as a way to help bridge the gap. Because while I have this great district supervisor group that supports me and is amazing, that's only a quarter of our school districts. So the work that they do and the work that I do ends up getting disseminated all across the state. Sometimes it ends up going all the way to teachers. Sometimes it goes to superintendents who pass it on to curriculum instruction folks. The bottom line, and what you'll hear from all of us, and what Lori and Jason have already talked about, is we're all here to support students and teachers, and everyone's kind of been thrown into this world together. And it's from here, where do we go, and how do we make this something where we look back and go, this fundamentally changed education in a good way, not this was the hardest thing we ever got through. And my concern is that in the fall, when we go back, a lot of teachers are hoping they can just survive to the end of the school year, enjoy their summer, and then they'll go back and it'll all be normal. And I feel like all of us as leaders and teachers in the classroom, as well as teacher leaders, are going to need to plan for what are these other alternatives so that I can still be successful and not feel like, oh no, I'm starting again, where I don't really feel comfortable and I don't have a plan. So that's really where we are right now as far as statewide. And I've been working with my great friends at CDA and a few of the other states to kind of cross paths and look at each other's ideas and try to cross-pollinate a little bit. But, you know, we're all going to do what we can do for kids and make sure it works out.
Thank you, Jessica. I really, really, really love, that's probably too many reallys, but this idea of customized professional development for your teachers. From the idea of, we've all been to the professional developments where they mass everybody in the room, and maybe it's meant for you, maybe it's not, but it's like sometimes it's a convenience of scheduling, and even just simply as a previous marching band director myself, I would often miss their early year professional developments because I would need to be off doing something, right? So now you have this ability to sort of choose your own adventure, if you will, of professional development sessions that'll help CQ. And I think this does a couple things immediately in my mind. One is that having this available, you can kind of take it whenever you want if it's archived. And it also gives a chance for the instructional leaders to look at these videos and look back and reflect and say, what's working, what's not, what's going on, what can we improve, how can we iterate on this process? And then it also flashed to this idea of our pre-service teachers, the teachers that are coming into the arts or into just teaching in general and saying, I don't know if I'm prepared, because obviously universities have limited resources. You don't know if you're getting up in Atlanta or a rural community or wherever this is going to be. And all of a sudden you can, have these accessible, if you choose to, just an idea of going out to the pre-service music teachers and just saying, this is a connectivity as you're coming into this district, and you're prepping. Here's professional development sessions that you can start taking advantage of right now before the school year even starts. And I think some of the great ideas that have come through between Lori's with the Wisconsin the informational sharing website that goes out to keep all the teachers informed of what's going on. Obviously alleviate some anxiety. Jason's hosting the town halls in Maine between the teachers. That's another great idea, to be able to share these common concerns. Much of this is, of course, going out on social platforms, but it's hard to archive those things and understand what's happening and relate to your district across the areas. But just really fantastic ideas, and thank you so much for sharing. For anybody that's joining us right now, please post any comments or any questions that you might have in the YouTube channel. I'll check that in a second. And we're going to move on to David Dietz from the great state or the Commonwealth, I should say, of Pennsylvania.
Thank you, Ryan, and thank you, Lee, for inviting me to be a part of this. Ryan, of course, was at one point in his life a music teacher in Pennsylvania. Just to give you a little landscape of Pennsylvania, we have the city of Philadelphia, which has thousands of students. And then we have a school district called Austin, which is in the northwest part of our state, the Forest. It has 189 students in the entire school district, a total of 500 public school districts, and I think about 167 private, charter, and other kinds of school districts. That little place called Austin in square miles is 1.5 times the size of Philadelphia. So we are a really diverse state, and we have some very unique rural problems, challenges, and we have some very unique inner city challenges, and we have a ton of suburban challenges as well. Knowing that I was going to be the fourth panelist, a lot of the things that you've heard from the first three panelists, and Laurie is a new friend to me now, Jason and Jessica, I know from our organization, the State Education Agency's Directors of Arts Education, which we call CDA. And we have heard many things from them that would be true also in Pennsylvania. Our governor, our Secretary of Education did Senate hearings on Monday. The questions were about, what's going to happen to reopen schools. We learned a little. We learned that the idea that we have in Pennsylvania of local education agency being the primary group, the school district makes up the rules of how things are going to happen. The State Department of Education will provide guidance to the schools on how they can open, but the decisions will primarily be left with our local education agencies. Now, that being said, he was also pretty strong in his language about paying attention to the guidance from the Department of Health. So that too will be very important. But this is also how we're opening up our state. We have sort of a red, yellow, green system, and as counties have less and less illness going on, then they're permitted to open up slowly. And so, and of course, there's a lot of political rankering back and forth about how that's all going to happen. And I would expect that all of our states are going to see some of that as we try to reopen our schools. There has also been a lot of webinars and opportunities to learn about music. And in my position, I come to this position as a retired music educator. So I've been on a lot of webinars that talk, some of it very gloom and doom about opening up for music, and some a little more optimistic. So it just depends on who you're listening to. I'm trying to catch as much as I can. But one of the things that I really liked yesterday on the primarily NAM sponsored NAM education video was the idea of recovery and rebuilding. And in our state, the recovery part was done very quickly by all of our state education arts organizations. Music, the Pennsylvania Music Educators, very active, very on top of it. We have such terrific and tremendous leadership. One of our past presidents will soon be the upcoming president of the National Association for Music Education. But all of our leaders in that organization have been very strong and very fast and moved quickly. And we'll talk a little bit more about what they've done in the rebuilding part, in addition to the recovery. I also work with the Educational Theater Association in our state and the Pennsylvania Art Education Association, the Media Arts Coalition for Education, and within the last year, a newly formed Pennsylvania Dance Education Organization. And those folks, just as of this morning, sent a letter to our Secretary of Education as a coalition, pretty much saying that we are here, we have been thinking about this, we are getting ourselves prepared. We understand, not this kind of language, but the Boy Scout be prepared. And we understand that the pool we're going to jump into, we might not know what the temperature of the water is. Jessica cited different ways that schools might open. Well, what are we going to do if it opens this way? What are we going to do if it opens this way? And to be prepared for all of those. And I'm so pleased to see that those organizations are doing just that. They have their membership working proactively to think about how to be prepared to open up, all the while continuing to do trainings and the like for not just their membership, but opening up to any teacher who wants to come in to just keep them running and afloat in this virtual education world that we find ourselves. As a part of rebuilding, I really liked what one of our local superintendents from the Cumberland Valley School District here near Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, he said that we have to understand that on these challenges, there is an absolute understanding that failure for our students cannot be an option, and that this is a once in a generation task that will require our best efforts and plans to make things work. So on the rebuilding side, I took a little temperature and did a little inquiry of organization leaders and ask them, what do you think your primary concerns are? And then I tried to take just narrative and group it into certain kinds of categories. And there were quite a few categories. And again, if you go on to the NAM webinar from yesterday, or pretty much anybody's webinar, you're going to hear the same categories over and over. But some of the interesting ones, you know, the arts connections, the opportunity for kids not just to be in music, but what it means to be in a musical and have music and arts and all the visual arts and all that kind of stuff together. The idea of burnout, not just burnout of teachers, but burnout of students, because I think right now we're finding that people are really starting to suffer from that burnout. In the future, what will curriculum and assessment really look like? What's important in curriculum? Distance learning issues, we know employment is on everybody's mind in the future, which is sort of tied with budget. Facilities, distance learning, keeping kids apart from each other, funding, performance, because we know performance so much in music. Performance is our product. professional development, the idea of retention and recruitment of kids. What if we have a year where it's really hard to recruit kids who are into our program, and then that year kind of floats through as kids start to graduate, and there's that kind of gap in there. The safety and sanitation issues, what will scheduling look like? Even online, scheduling is very difficult, because you can't get access to your kids all in a group because they've all got their math or science class or something. The social emotional issues, they're going to be huge, not just for students, but also for teachers. And I think somebody mentioned the student teaching thing. So those were some big overarching things. And I thought, while we're thinking about that, what are some of the problems in there? I think the complete glut of information right now is frightening. And a lot of that information is going to become misinformation when it's all said and done. So to try and create a sense of calm and ease so that people take the information, at face value, but try not to project the worst. But as our Secretary of Education did say, we're gonna plan for the best and plan for the worst. So we want to be ready on all parts of the continuum. As a part of all that, our music education organization did send letters to all of the superintendents, and had some pieces put together for their membership, where they remind their membership to connect with students, to remember to participate in rites of passage for kids, not just seniors graduating, but we've got other rites of passage that happen at different points in your life. And music and arts can be so much a part of that. And we can do that in a virtual way. So don't forget that as you're starting to get exhausted, thinking, oh my gosh, we have just 2 weeks left, and can I make it? So those some really good advice from our music ed group, keeping parents informed, reaching out to your administrators, and inserting yourself into the planning that your school district's going to have. And in Pennsylvania, that will be important at the local level, because that's where a lot of the decisions will get made based on guidelines that are provided by the state. To connect and collaborate with colleagues, so important as we rebuild. Our colleagues have great ideas. I just got a little text from a young fellow that I taught with in my last year of teaching, bright young guy, is doing great work here in the state of Pennsylvania. He had a question. I get questions like, what are you thinking at the state level? Sometimes I know, sometimes I don't know. I'm not on the inner circle of privy information, but I know some things. And then after talking with him, I felt so uplifted because he had such great ideas. I said, you need to share those ideas with everybody. So getting those collaborative networks works out. And just some of those ideas. So Pennsylvania Music Ed has been really on the front of that with doing those kind of things. Lastly, I'd say we can't just look at problems without saying, what is our remedy going to be? And that's certainly a part of planning. And my thoughts were that we need to be prepared for all scenarios: the physical, the social distancing, the social emotional learning, and particularly in music and in all of the arts. I think we often think that the social emotional learning is just something that naturally flows from what we do. And while I believe that to be true, I think now is the time for us to be more intentional with our social emotional learning, and for us to be in service and learning some of the important techniques. I've been so inspired by some of the things I've seen from a national guru, Scott Edgar, where music education is concerned, and his work with social emotional learning. Putting your foot in the door in districts, making a collective impact between all of the arts, not just living in your own world. I saw something after there was this terrible thing about, what are we going to do with choirs? And I'm a choir guy. And when you think about being a choir guy right now, we stand shoulder to shoulder and we breathe heavy and we do lip trills, which is kind of like spitting on your neighbor. That could be frowned upon at this point in time. But then somebody said, oh, well, instruments are safer. Oh yeah, they're safer. The French horns and all the brass instruments leave all of that very wet stuff on the floor when they leave class. People might debate that. So work together. Don't try to work so hard to get your piece of the pie and save it. We in the arts need to work together and make a collective impact. Take care of kids. Reach them, make sure students feel comfortable contacting you. I thought somebody had said it just that way, and I wrote it down. It was so important. Deeply study the national standards, because the national standards are process-based standards. And right now, teaching to process might be very valuable for us. If we teach process now, we'll be able to get back to product later. Kids will be ready to have product. I mean, kids will want product. Music is very much a part of their social life in addition to their academic life. Communicate with students, administrators, parents, and community members, all of them. Collaborate and share. Don't feel that everything has to be perfect from the start. I was advising people that I heard it somewhere, when we first got this big swarm of all of these things that you can use to be online. And I really truly thought, I'm so glad that I'm not in the classroom right now, because it's way too much technology for me to absorb all at once. Take 15 minutes a day, look up some things, see if it's something you can use, call somebody to help you learn how to use it, but don't feel that everything has to be perfect. And be sure to celebrate milestones and rites of passage of all sorts, not just going from this grade level to this grade level with kids, but celebrating with your colleagues when it's like, you know what, when I first made these YouTube videos, they looked really terrible, but now I figured out how to do all these cool things and stuff like that. So share them and celebrate. And I think that those are the important things that we might want to remember as we go forward with whatever it's going to be.
Thank you so much, David. You know, it's really that look forward, I think, is so important, right? And maybe I'm the always the silver lining type of person, but looking ahead to what we can build is really exciting. It gives us a chance to collaborate and create new projects and to really make that connection. And the other thing that always strikes me is we think so much about what we're doing in the school in the music classroom, and how is this going to affect whether it's a choir or a band or a pop ensemble, and how can we make these things work? But meanwhile, I think about students getting to school, and how do you a group of kids will always walk to school, and you think about, like, how do you even factor in those things? You have an environment that you can control somewhat and try to schedule, but how do you control all those other possible pieces in that? So thank you. We do have some questions from our YouTube channel, and one of those says that, and this is just open for anyone, the elementary teachers in my district worry that band lessons might be taken away in favor of bridging gaps in skill loss in the ELA and math. How would you present this as a concern to the administration? Go ahead, Jason.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, I can just throw something out there, Ryan, to help with that. We've been having, through these office hours that I've been having with music educators around the state over the last several weeks, and the town halls that I've had the last couple of nights, we've been having these kind of discussions, is how do you get yourself to the table? And in Maine, the music, especially in our rural communities, the music program is a huge draw of students from the whole student body, and from all walks of life. And so the idea that we've been talking about the kids that come to school for their band lesson. They come to school to be in band. They come to school to be in chorus or be in the arts. And that's a real important part of their identity, and helping them figure out who they are and how their world works and how they react with their world and interact with their world. So, the idea of trying to just remind school boards and school leaders and communities about, that this was important before, and there's no reason why it can't be important now. And, I have a great team of social, emotional, and trauma-informed specialists at the Department of Education in Maine that are working with me and the rest of my content specialist colleagues to figure out what the framework needs to look like. And, the arts play a huge role in that, as my other panelists today have alluded to. And so, it's trying to show how we have that social emotional component in there, and how important that is for kids, so that it's not seen as something that's extra, but it's seen as something that's essential.
Absolutely. I think that's so important, is that, there's a saying that in Washington that says, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, right? So to make sure that your voice is being heard. And I just saw, thank you, Bob. One of the questions that we had also in the chat was from Frank Makos, Executive Director for Arts Education for the School District of Philadelphia, asking if there was going to be some sort of a release from CDA to like a unified letter, a unified response that can go out to the states. And I see that Bob Morrison on the chat had responded very quickly, which is excellent. And one of his other questions was that, is there a lot of, and I just want to make sure I get this right, are there, you're also curious if the state reps on the panel are advocating directly to the state secretaries of education about the arts, about music? David?
I'm not on the committee as of yet. I'm not sure how far along their work is. I did have conversation this morning with one of my bosses, for lack of a better word, and he was just said, that he was aware of working on it, and I certainly made it well known that I'm prepared to do whatever needs to be done to, so that the arts are well included in the plan. And I think that this was really a part of sending a letter to the Secretary of Education, because a part of our letter speaks to this thinking to the table, and also the PMEA letter to the superintendents, bringing that thinking to the school district level as well. So that let them know that we are thinking about this, and how can we look at the parameters that you're going to give us, because you have to, not because you want to, but because you have to, and what we can do to work within those parameters to continue to deliver quality arts education to our students.
And Ryan, I would just add,
Yeah.
similar to Dave's situation, I'm not on the task force myself, but we're assured that the Commissioner of Education and members of the task force team are going to be meeting with the content specialists very soon, because again, my colleagues and I, we've all been hearing from the field their views on this. So we're encouraged that we'll be meeting with the Commissioner's team soon to be part of that voice, being at the table instead of on the menu.
That's right. And I know we started a little bit late, so we're just going to do one more question, and then, I'll thank everybody. And I also thank the people on YouTube, on the YouTube channel that are responding to the comments and answering some of these questions even before they come to us. What are the budget pivots that states/districts/schools/teachers are having to make in this new environment? What is missing funding that needs to be enacted and wasn't planned for? Let me know if I need to read that again. It's a lot. What are the budget pivots that states, districts, schools, teachers are having to make in this new environment, was the first part of the question. It's a big question to end with.
Yeah, kind of nebulous. I know in our state, the governor's already said that there'd be a 14% cut across the board for all state agencies, and that trickles all the way down to school systems. So right now, everybody's in a planning stage to see what is that going to look like and where are those cuts going to be made. And some of those decisions can't really be made until the school systems decide when are they going to go back and which way are they going to go back, because you could save a lot of transportation costs if you go back virtually, or you could also save some money on buildings and facilities in addition to transportation costs if you have a truncated first semester. So it's like, until some decisions are made by the individual school districts, as we see whether or not we have a spike in cases or we stay on the downswing, when they're going to open, then they can make those choices. We know it's a 14% cut across the board, but I know all states are kind of in this situation where they know there's cuts coming. We just don't have a final figure, and ours may go up or down. We don't know at this point.
Ryan,
go ahead, Lori. Yes.
Yeah, I think the other thing that we're seeing is there's the amount and like what the budget's for, but there's also the locus of control over who makes decisions about the budget at the classroom and school and district level. And as Jessica was just sharing, until decisions are made, when we find a lot of teachers who normally are gearing up and pre-planning for next year have had their budgets frozen and don't have those answers yet. So there's both the shift in what the budget money will be spent for, but also who gets to make those decisions. Pretty abrupt shift with everything that's happening. So I know that's also something we're watching in terms of an advocacy piece about how to coach teachers in the types of conversations they might need to have once those decisions are known, so that they can advocate to still be able to provide some of the things for their students in whatever environment or platform instruction is delivered.
Thank you so much. We're gonna close it out. Thank you so much for everybody joining this other edition of the GMC Virtual Town Hall. Next week we have a very exciting one coming up on modern music and the application of that, and we have some great guests that are going to be with us from Little Kids Rock, the Grammy Museum, Save the Music Foundation, and there's one more that I'm missing right now. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on this as it goes through, but I'm going to turn it over to Lee and let us close out this virtual town hall.
And Ryan, I don't know if I listened to all the lineup for next week, but also we have Bruce Warren coming from WXPN and the Dash team from Philadelphia.
That's correct.
Nation Urban. So to all of our panelists today, I have to tell you what an interesting conversation. And I know I feel very assured with all of these wonderful, committed education professionals leading the charge in their states that the right things are being done and the right things are being brought up in this very challenging time. So to all of you, thank you so very much. Ryan, you did a great job hosting today. And again, to reiterate, we hold these virtual town halls, the Hub Live, every Wednesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. And that's, of course, 10 a.m. Pacific time. And one last thing for today, we have a really cool masterclass going on tomorrow online as well. Go to our Facebook page and check out the detailed information. But we have just a phenomenal cellist, Gauthier Capuçon, joining, and will be interviewed and will perform. Our interviewer and our weekly host for these sessions is Grammy Music Education Coalition Ambassador, Sophia Basilar. Please don't miss this tomorrow. And if you have students and friends that would be interested, let them know. Gabrielle Capuçon with Sophia Basilar at 1 o'clock Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific tomorrow. So again, thanks to all of our panelists today. Ryan, thanks for moderating a fantastic conversation. We hope we'll catch you tomorrow at 1 and next Wednesday at 1 p.m. as well. Thank you. Have a great one, everybody. Stay safe.